The galaxy had always looked down on humanity. They were the newcomers, the species without an empire, the people with no great fleets or mighty armies. To the Galactic Council, humanity was an acceptable nuisance, too weak to be respected, too stubborn to be ignored. For years, Earth played by the rules. They obeyed the trade laws, followed the Council's decisions, and remained peaceful despite constant insults. Other species saw humans as harmless merchants, explorers, and diplomats. They underestimated humanity's patience. But patience had its limits. The HFY Dominion, one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, controlled hundreds of worlds and ruled with an iron fist. They saw humans as weaklings, easy to push around. When a small human colony, Vandro 7, was accused of violating HFY trade laws, the Dominion responded without warning. A fleet of warships arrived in orbit. They did not send a message. They did not give a warning. They simply attacked. Vandro 7 was a peaceful colony, home to farmers, workers, and families. They had no defenses, no weapons, nothing to fight back with. The HFY rained fire from above, turning cities into ash. Thousands died in minutes. Those who survived the bombardment suffered a far worse fate. The HFY landed troops on the surface. The invaders did not take prisoners. They hunted the survivors, executing them on live broadcasts. They burned homes with people still inside. Children were dragged from their parents and shot in the streets. The entire massacre was shown across the Dominion's networks, a display of power meant to remind humanity of their place. The HFY laughed as they broadcast their victory to the galaxy. To them, this was just another lesson for a weaker species. But they had made a mistake. When the news reached Earth, there was silence. For a full day, no official statement was made. Then, the United Human Federation sent a formal request to the Galactic Council. Humanity did not demand war. They did not seek revenge. They simply asked for justice. The evidence was undeniable. The HFY had committed genocide. Their soldiers had recorded their crimes and spread them across the stars. It was clear, brutal, and horrific. But the Council did nothing. The great empires of the galaxy, the ones who claimed to stand for peace and order, refused to act. One by one, the delegates dismissed the issue. The HFY were enforcing their laws. The Zorveni Chancellor said. The humans should not have settled there. A Dreth ambassador added. It is unfortunate, the Council speaker declared, but the matter is closed. Humanity had followed the rules. They had trusted the system, and the system had abandoned them. The day after the Council's decision, Earth sent its final transmission. Ambassador Elias Carter stood before the entire Galactic Assembly. His face was calm, but his voice carried something cold, something dangerous. For years, humanity believed in your laws, he said. We believed in peace. We believed in justice. He paused. No one spoke. The room was silent. You have shown us the truth, Carter continued. Justice does not exist in this galaxy. There is only power. The strong do as they please. The weak suffer. The Council watched, waiting for him to beg, to plead. He did neither. If there is no justice, Carter said, then there will be war. Then the screen went black. The transmission had ended. The human delegation left the Council. Earth cut off all diplomatic channels. Trade stopped. Human ships vanished from the hyperlanes. Their colonies went silent. The galaxy laughed. They cannot win, the HFY said. They are weak. They will come crawling back, the Council declared. They hide because they are afraid, the Zorveni mocked. But something was happening, something the galaxy did not understand. Humanity had snapped, and war had become inevitable. The HFY Dominion did not fear humanity. To them, humans were just another weak species, one that had forgotten its place. Their threats of war were nothing more than the cries of a wounded animal, loud, desperate, but ultimately powerless. The XL-FAR had crushed greater civilizations than this. They saw no reason to take humanity seriously. But something was different this time, something that made even the most arrogant XL-FAR commanders uneasy. For the first time in history, humanity had gone silent. Their ships, once common in the trade routes, had disappeared. Their colonies, usually active and filled with messages to the wider galaxy, went dark. The great orbital stations where human diplomats once argued for peace were now empty. Earth did not send demands. They did not protest. They did not speak. They simply vanished behind a wall of silence. At first, the galaxy ignored it. The other species continued their daily affairs, believing humanity had accepted its fate. Some even mocked them, calling them cowards who had retreated into their little world. The Galactic Council moved on to other matters, acting as if the massacre of Vandros 7 had never happened. But then the reports began. A XL-FAR warship, the Corthan's Blade, had failed to report in. A patrol was sent to investigate, but when they arrived, they found the ship adrift in space. Its power core was still active. Its weapons were online. There was no sign of battle. But the crew was gone. Not dead, just gone. On the walls of the ship, written in something dark and red, were two words in the XL-FAR language. "We are coming." The Dominion tried to hide the incident, but soon more reports arrived. Ships vanished. Outposts went silent. A supply depot on the edge of XL-FAR space was found abandoned, its security teams missing, its automated defenses still intact. It was as if something had swept through and erased everything without a sound. There was no enemy fleet detected, no sign of large-scale attacks. Just whispers of movement in the dark, shadows on long-range sensors, and the growing realization that humanity was no longer hiding. They were preparing. The XL-FAR High Command dismissed the concerns at first. They sent more patrols, larger fleets, greater forces to contain the humans. They expected a frightened species, one that would scatter at the first sign of aggression. Instead, their ships found nothing. No resistance, no response. The deeper they pushed into human territory, the more uneasy they became. It was like stepping into the lair of a predator, one that was watching, but not yet ready to strike. One XL-FAR general, an old war veteran named Threxen Vol, grew concerned. Unlike his younger counterparts, he had studied human history. He had seen how humanity fought its wars, not with overwhelming power like the XL-FAR, but with patience, strategy, and terrifying precision. When they were underestimated, they did not break. They adapted. They changed. And when they struck back, they did not stop until their enemies were nothing but ashes. Vol sent a warning to the Dominion's rulers. Do not mistake their silence for weakness, he urged. They are not hiding. They are waiting. His warning was ignored. The XL-FAR were too proud, too confident. They believed humanity was incapable of fighting back. But then, one night, across multiple systems at once, the human fleets appeared. Ships unlike anything the XL-FAR had seen before. Dark, silent, armed with weapons that should not exist. They did not announce their arrival. They did not make demands. They simply began. And in the first few hours of battle, the XL-FAR lost more ships than they had in 100 years. The XL-FAR Dominion had always believed in the power of overwhelming force. Their fleets were vast, their armies brutal, and their reputation was built on crushing weaker species before they could ever become a threat. Against humanity, they expected the same outcome. They believed the humans would fight like all the others, frantically, desperately, and without hope. But the first battles shattered that illusion. The attacks came without warning, striking deep into XL-FAR space. Shipyards, command stations, and supply routes that had stood untouched for centuries were suddenly burning. Human warships moved with precision, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. They did not conquer worlds. They did not demand surrender. They only destroyed. Entire fleets vanished in ambushes, their wreckage left floating in silence. The HFY, so used to being the hunters, now found themselves the prey. At first, they assumed it was a fluke, a lucky attack, perhaps a desperate gamble by a doomed species, but then it happened again. And again. HFY admirals sent reinforcements, but those fleets vanished just like the others. Officers spoke of weapons that bypassed shields, of human ships that seemed to predict their every move. Some whispered that the humans had become something more than mortal. Others, too proud to admit fear, called it trickery. But one fact remained: humanity was winning. In the capital world of the Dominion, the supreme warlord Thurzin watched the reports with growing fury. He slammed his fist against the war table, his claws scraping against the metal. "How?" he growled. "How are they doing this?" His advisors had no answers. The Dominion's greatest strength had always been its overwhelming numbers, its ability to crush resistance before it could take root. But the humans were not fighting to hold territory. They were not fighting like a species that wanted to win a war. They were fighting like a species that wanted revenge. With every battle, the HFY were being blood dry. Their supply lines were shattered, their morale crumbling. They were forced to retreat, something they had never done before. Fear spread through their ranks, a fear they had never known. And then came the message. A simple transmission, broadcasted on every HFY frequency. A human voice, calm and cold, speaking words that sent a chill through every warrior who heard them. "You wanted war. Now you have it. We will not stop. We will not negotiate. We will not forgive." The war had only just begun, and the HFY were beginning to understand. They had made the greatest mistake in their history. The HFY Dominion had never known fear. They had ruled the stars for centuries, crushing every enemy before them. To them, war was a simple thing: march forward, burn everything, and make an example of those who resisted. But this war was different. The humans did not fight like any enemy they had faced before. They did not engage in grand battles. They did not seek to hold territory. They struck from the darkness, appearing where they should not be, hitting hard, and vanishing before a counterattack could be launched. The Dominion's war fleets, once proud and unstoppable, were being torn apart piece by piece. Admiral Kothar, one of the Dominion's finest commanders, stood aboard his flagship, watching the latest battle reports. Another fleet lost. Another world in chaos. His mandibles clenched as he studied the human tactics. They did not attack blindly. Every move was calculated. Every strike aimed at weakening the Dominion's supply chains, communications, and leadership. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were dismantling the entire war machine of the HFY. Desperation set in. The Dominion began massing their fleets, hoping to lure the humans into a decisive battle. But humanity refused to play by their rules. Every time the HFY prepared their forces, the humans struck somewhere else. Shipyards exploded, command stations were infiltrated, and high-ranking officials vanished, leaving only bloodstains behind. The war was no longer about territory. It was a hunt. Whispers spread among the HFY ranks, stories of human special forces, soldiers who could breach the most secure bases and leave no survivors. They called them ghosts. Entire war councils disappeared overnight, their bodies never found. The fear was growing. On the Dominion's throne world, Supreme Warlord Thurzin felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. He had believed humanity would break, that their anger would burn out. But instead, it had only grown stronger. Their hatred had become a weapon sharper than any blade. And then the unthinkable happened. A fleet of human warships entered the HFY home system, bypassing all defenses as if they were nothing. They did not attack. They did not demand surrender. Instead, they broadcasted a single message to the Dominion's leaders: "This is not war. This is justice, and we are just getting started." For the first time in their history, the HFY Dominion truly understood what it meant to be hunted. The Supreme Warlord Thurzin stood in silence as he watched the latest battle footage. He had seen countless wars, countless civilizations burned to ash beneath the might of the Dominion. But this was different. The screen before him showed the wreckage of an entire HFY fleet, ships torn apart with terrifying precision. There were no survivors, no distress calls, just a silent graveyard of twisted metal drifting through the void. The humans had struck again, and once more they had left nothing behind but destruction. Thurzin clenched his claws, his fury barely contained. "How?" he growled, his voice sharp with frustration. "How do they keep doing this?" His advisors shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. None of them had answers. The Dominion had mobilized its mightiest fleets, deployed its most ruthless warriors, and yet they were losing. The humans did not fight fair. They refused to engage in open combat. Instead, they attacked from the shadows, striking where the Dominion was weakest. "They don't fight for conquest," one of the advisors finally muttered. "They fight for something else, something deeper. Revenge." That word hung in the air, unspoken but felt by all. The humans were not interested in victory. They did not demand surrender. They did not seek negotiations. They only sought retribution. They had been pushed too far, had suffered too much, and now there was no stopping them. Reports flooded in from across the Dominion. Entire military outposts had been wiped out in a single night. The great orbital shipyards, once the heart of the HFY war machine, were nothing but molten wreckage. The Dominion's supply lines were in ruins. The once proud fleets of the HFY, which had conquered the stars with unstoppable force, were now being hunted like prey. And the worst part, no one knew where the humans would strike next. Paranoia spread through the Dominion like a plague. High-ranking officers abandoned their posts, fearing assassination. Entire colonies fell into panic, fearing the arrival of human forces. Even the HFY's most loyal warriors began to doubt. And then came the message. It was broadcasted across every Dominion-controlled system, a human voice, calm and cold, echoing through the stars. "You should have left us alone." With those words, a dozen HFY planets erupted into chaos. Simultaneous strikes, perfectly coordinated, devastated key locations. Shipyards collapsed, military outposts were wiped off the map, and communication networks failed. The Dominion was not just losing a war, it was being dismantled. For the first time in its history, the HFY Dominion faced an enemy it could not break. Humanity had snapped, and the war was far from over. The once mighty HFY Dominion was crumbling. Their fleets, which had once spread terror across the stars, were in shambles. Their leaders, once so confident, now lived in fear. The war had turned into something they never expected, a nightmare they could not wake up from. Admiral Cathar sat in the darkened war room, staring at the reports in front of him. Planet after planet lost, fleets wiped out before they could even react. Human ships moving with impossible precision, striking like ghosts, leaving only wreckage behind. The Dominion had tried everything, deploying their elite forces, fortifying key locations, setting traps. Nothing worked. The humans always knew. It was as if they could see every move before it happened. "They are not fighting a war," Cathar muttered to himself. "They are hunting us." He wasn't wrong. Humanity no longer fought like a desperate species trying to survive. They fought like executioners, delivering judgment on those who had wronged them. There was no mercy, no hesitation, only destruction. The Dominion's leadership was in chaos. Supreme Warlord Thurzin had ordered full defensive measures, but it was too late. The humans had already infiltrated too deep, shattered too much. Supply lines were gone, entire fleets had been isolated, and panic had spread among the troops. Some HFY commanders had even begun surrendering, hoping to escape the human wrath. But there was no surrender. A new message came, broadcasted on every Dominion frequency. "Your leaders doomed you. Your empire is finished. We are not here to conquer. We are here to end this. The words sent a shiver through every HFY who heard them. And then the real horror began. Human ground forces landed on Dominion core worlds, not in full-scale invasions, but in precise, surgical strikes. They did not target civilians. They did not waste time with occupation. They went after the ruling class, the high-ranking officers, the warlords who had ordered the slaughter of their people. One by one, they were eliminated. Palaces burned, command centers turned to rubble, and fortified bunkers were cracked open like eggs. No one was safe. Tharzan watched from his throne room as explosions lit up the night sky outside. His guards were already dead. The doors had been breached. He reached for his weapon, but he knew it was pointless. Humanity had come for him, and there was no escape. Supreme Warlord Tharzan stood alone in the ruins of his once great palace. Fires raged across the city below, casting a crimson glow over the shattered skyline. Explosions echoed in the distance as the last remnants of the Dominion's forces fell, one by one. The war was over. But this was not a surrender. This was an execution. Tharzan gripped his blade, his mandibles twitching as he listened to the silence creeping through the halls of his throne room. The guards were gone. The servants had fled. There was no one left to protect him. Only the ghosts of his past mistakes remained. A shadow moved in the darkness. He turned, raising his weapon, but it was too late. A human soldier stepped into the dim light, clad in black armor, his rifle lowered at his side. He was not here to fight. He was here to deliver a message. Tharzan bared his fangs. Do it, human. End me. The soldier didn't move. Instead, he tossed something onto the ground between them. A simple datapad. The warlord frowned but picked it up. As the screen flickered to life, his eyes widened in disbelief. It was a recording. A collection of every atrocity the Dominion had committed against humanity. The slaughtered colonies, the burning cities, the cries of the dying. All of it, every crime, every moment. The weight of his empire's sins laid bare before him. You never understood, the soldier said, his voice calm. You thought you were fighting an enemy like all the others, a species that would kneel, that would break. Tharzan's claws tightened around the datavad. But humans don't break, the soldier continued. We end those who make the mistake of thinking we will. The warlord laughed bitterly. So, this is justice. The soldier tilted his head. No, this is consequence. A single shot rang out. Tharzan fell, his reign ending not with a grand battle, but with a whisper in the dark. The human soldier stepped over the body and activated his communicator. Target eliminated. The Dominion is finished. Across the galaxy, the last strongholds of the HFY fell within days. Without their leaders, their forces collapsed. Some tried to run, but there was nowhere left to hide. Others surrendered, hoping for mercy. Humanity gave none. The war had been forced upon them. They had never wanted it. But when the moment came, when the line was crossed, they had not hesitated. The HFY Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries. Now, they were nothing but ashes and echoes. And as the human fleet departed the broken throne world, one final message was left behind, carved into the ruins for all to see. Never again.